Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show on this Tuesday, the 1st of February, 2022. Thank you for tuning in. Glad to have you guys here. You know, I've been seeing a very disturbing trend over the last couple years, probably the last 4 years, or maybe a little bit longer. And this trend is all around the world. We see in different places, doesn't matter what country we're talking about, eruptions of people doing protests. We see it here, there, and everywhere popping out. And we're getting so used to it now that we see it in the news, one country or another, there's a protest, and there's so many, we don't even pay that much attention. But the disturbing trend that I notice is the government's reaction to the protests. It doesn't matter which country, there's been quite literally more protests than I can count on both my hands and my toes over recent periods, you know. It doesn't really matter so much which country. What the governments do is they try to quell the protests with the police, and then they wait it out. They basically don't listen to the grievances that the people have. They just wait until the people get tired of protesting and go home. Protest's over, job's well done, it's over now, and then the government goes right back on to what they wanted to do in the first place. The way I see it, you know, this is the first step, a government not listening to the people, is the first step on the slippery slope toward authoritarianism. Now, why I say that's a slippery slope for the government as well, there comes a certain consensus point where more than 50% of the population of a country is opposed to the government. More than 50%. Well, you're always going to get a certain percentage of people that oftentimes when governments start to slip into authoritarianism, the media becomes a propaganda ministry. This has happened in many countries. And there's always a certain amount of people that are going to listen to the propaganda ministry and are going to follow along no matter what the government does. They can be setting up gulags left and right. Doesn't matter which country. The people that are and you descend down this slippery slope where more and more people start to hate the government in the end. The government ends up moving to the next step, which is electing their leader for life. There's a very bad sign that they're moving toward authoritarianism. Then the government gets caught in this authoritarian trap. It's a vicious cycle where the people hate them so much and want them out of power unanimously in the country, maybe even as many as 80% or 70%, but they don't voice this opinion. And the government has to go on a basically trying to weed out dissenters. And they create fear in order to keep the people under their authoritarian regime. And they use the propaganda ministry, and they will use techniques to create this fear where people are reporting on one another. People will report so-and-so, and then that person just disappears. Where do they go? Well, of course. Government just takes them and they're gone. And people are frightened of the government at that point. And the government maintains that fear to maintain their authoritarian government. And it actually progresses from that point even worse, where the oppression gets worse and worse to where the government, in the final stages of authoritarianism, the government is so oppressive that productivity in the country starts to decline. Also, the population will start to decline. It's a living hell at that point for the government and for the people that are under the authoritarian government. This has been done over and over again through history. You know, I mean, this is something that is a slippery slope once you get started, and that's why I say, because it's a self-perpetuating, self-feeding cycle that once it gets generated, it's not really happy for anybody that's within what starts to happen within this authoritarian type structure. Now, I'm going to tell you, the West, the way our system is structured, it's hard to descend into authoritarianism. And, but what people need to watch out for is these initial signs of a descent toward authoritarianism. Anyway, I wanted to say that. I want to get started with the markets now. So let's open up the charts right here and take a look. What we're looking at is silver today, which is down up 25 cents, I should say. You see, I'm going to tell you something about the West, so. Yeah, we don't have authoritarianism as such that some of these countries have seen in history, but our financial system has descended into authoritarianism. That part of our system is descended into it's all completely controlled. The financial system is already authoritarianism. It's already the whole financial system is an authoritarian criminal organization, as far as that's what it's descended into. It's got nothing. People don't have any say over what goes on in the financial system. The central bankers have the say. They are the authority. And so the financial system is already authoritarianism. They have complete and utter control over every market. And it's all been, basically, it's absolutely disgusting what they're trying to do within the financial system. It's a nest of vipers. The whole financial system has become a nest of vipers that enriches the rich and impoverishes the poor. They're doing just the exact opposite from Robin Hood. You remember Robin Hood, the stories of Robin Hood? He used to go out and rob from the rich and give to the poor. Well, in this case, they're robbing from the poor and giving to the rich. Talk about unjust. And you can't have a happy, healthy society out there if you don't have a thriving middle class. And they're destroying the middle class as fast as they can. But the middle class, is going to say at a certain point, hey, we don't want to be destroyed. We realize that financially speaking, perhaps even more than that, it's you or us. At a certain point, they're going to realize that, hey, this is set up so that it's just going to wipe us all out. At a certain point, they're just going to dawn on them, hey, you know what? The financial system means to wreak financial ruin on us, and it's them or us. Because that's what it's going to come down to. But guess what, guys? The ones within the financial system, they already know that. It's just you haven't figured it out yet that it's you or them. And so they're coming down. They're bringing the hammer down. You're the ant underneath the hammer. And the hammer's coming down. And will you come to a realization before the hammer flattens you and squishes you? Because they mean to do it, and they mean to do it fast. They've been suppressing the price of these precious metals. Look, $22.66. It's up 23 cents today. But still, it starts to go up and they knock it down. It made it up to, what was it, 23 bucks? And now she's settled back down to 22.66. I say settled back down, but let's see, where did that coincide with? New York! Opening of the COMEX. Look at there. You can see London, and then it switches over to New York, and boom, down she goes. We're at it again, our boys at the COMEX. Gold today. 1803, and gold's settling back down since the COMEX is open too. They've knocked it down, had a little bounce back, and they're knocking it down again right now. Let's take a look at cryptocurrency today. 1652, and we're looking at a Bitcoin price of 39. No, that can't be it. It must be my eyes deceiving me here. Anyway, the Bitcoin price is 39,111. It's been creeping up. It's been trying to make up some ground that it lost, you know. It's getting up almost to $40,000 again. Okay, we're going to take a look now at the stock market, and we're going to go right here to the Dow Jones, which is up 41 points today at 35,173. Now, how do I know that this market's going to crash out of bed? Well, it's like this. The market has figured out that this is going to end with the Fed pivoting and going back to a dovish stance again. The market's figured that out. And I've been telling you guys that's going to happen. Well, the market's figured that out now, and it knows that. And that's why the market's holding so good. It's not falling out. That's why the markets, I should say, not just the Dow Jones, but all the markets are holding so good. Knowing what the Fed's doing right now. Because what the Fed's announcing that they're going to do should terrorize the markets, and we should see the markets fall out of bed now. But we're not seeing that, because the market's figured the Fed out. The market's saying to themselves, ha ha ha, they're going to taper. Ha ha ha, they're going to cut their balance sheet. Ha ha ha. They're going to raise interest rates. Ha ha ha. No, they're not, the market says. They're going to pivot. The market knows that. But here's the thing. They are not going to pivot until the market crashes out of bed. And the market said, I'm not going to crash out of bed because you're going to pivot. And I know that. And the Fed's saying, okay, we're not going to pivot until you crash. Well, the market's saying, I'm not going to crash until you pivot. The whole thing is just a crazy mess where that's what's buoying the market. But here's the thing, guys. Most of the people in the market are saying, hey, you know, the Fed is going to pivot. When? When's the Fed going to pivot? Well, we don't know. But the markets, when things get bad, the Fed's still got our back. Trust us, the Fed's still got our back. And most of them are saying, okay, let's hold pat. Let's not sell off or anything. Let's hold pat because they're going to pivot. Well, a certain amount of investors in there, after this goes on a little while, and they see the Fed is really firm and determined, are going to say, heck, I'm selling. I'm getting out of this. This is a hyper bubble. I'm going to get out of this. First few start to sell off, and the market starts to sell off, then more are going to say, hey, you know, they're going to get scared. They're going to lose their nerve. The people in the market are going to lose their nerve. Then that will generate the fear. See, right now, they don't have the fear. When the fear starts to generate and the market starts to really turn down, and it's too much for a buy the dip guy, he's like, I'm out of here. That's it. No more buying a dip. I'm out of here. This market is until the Fed pivots. I'm not buying a dip any. And they all start to sell, then we're going to see the downturn in the market. But it's only when the Fed progresses a bit further. Because what have they done so far? What's the Fed done? Really meaningful? Well, they were supporting the markets with $120 billion a month. Well, they've only cut it back to 90. That means they're still dumping $90 billion a month in. Well, no wonder the markets are staying buoyed. But the cuts are going to come fast and furious now. And the people that are in the market that know that the Fed's going to pivot are hanging diamonds, or staying in there hanging diamonds. You know, they're going to start dropping out one by one. And then the fear is going to come in. Then more of them are going to start dropping out. And then what's going to happen is the Fed's going to keep going. The Fed ain't going to stop. They don't see the markets falling. They're going to keep going until they get the crash they're looking for. That's going to stop them and make them pivot. So that's what we're waiting for. We're waiting for the investors to start to realize that, hey, the Fed's not really kidding around. But does that mean just because the Fed's not kidding around, does that mean there's going to be no pivot and the Fed's not going to change direction? Of course they're going to change direction. But they got to have the markets fall enough where it comes in under their data dependent things. Hey, the Fed's data dependent, and the data has to turn sour. Then the Fed will be the quickest out there to pivot. When they pivot this time, it's basically over. You better have your gold and silver and cryptos when they pivot. You better have had it all purchased already and have it in your possession, because the price is going to go up so quick on everything, and everything is going to go into this massive inflation after they pivot. Because what does it mean when they finally pivot back and they decide to go back soft and easy with the money again? It means that this last hurrah for the Fed, where they say, okay, we're going to fix everything, it means that they can't. It's done. It's over. We're going to head toward the hyperinflation then at that point. And I know it's taken a long time to get here, and I know right now that we're having to muddle through this whole thing with the Fed trying to do something about inflation. They're creating the perfect opportunity for themselves with what they're doing to actually bring on their central bank digital currency. Because there's a very strong possibility that when the markets finally do get frightened and they start to really fall, that they're going to scream down, fall to the point so quick that they could actually freeze the credit markets. So what happens? They freeze the credit markets. What happens then? Well, the central banks are going to have to rescue the system then, like they did in 2008. But they got such a big balance sheet and everything's so bloated now at this point. Just think, they're going to need all these new dollars. Well, they could create SDRs, billions of SDRs, or they could just go ahead and release their central bank digital currency during the crisis that they generated. Oh yeah, that would be a great idea. Then they can create as much money as they want. Unlimited. It's all just digits anyway. Central bank digital currency out there, run it parallel with the US dollar system, because they wouldn't be able to do it any other way. They'd have to run it parallel. And they would have to wait until it gets all installed before they could remove the rest of the dollars from the system, which might take a while. So they'd be running two things at the same time. They'd be running your central bank digital dollar, the Fed coin, call it Fed coin if you want, it's CBDC, a central bank digital currency dollar, that would be worth the same as the regular dollars out there. And then they could be free to do things like UBI, Universal Basic Income, would be in the cards, They could send people money. They could even put a timestamp on the money. So maybe a month timestamp. They send you the money, it's in your wallet, and if it ain't spent by the last day of the month, poop, it disappears from your wallet. Well, that would really get spending going, wouldn't it? Yeah, but think about what it's going to do to inflation. Okay, I'm rambling here. Let me get back on track. Crude oil today, 88.42. It's up 27 cents. Let's take a look at the MOVE index today with 85.14, and it's kind of going along sideways. Bonds and rates, we're seeing them creep up today. We're looking at a U.S. 10-year at 1.8, almost 1.81. In the U.S. 30-year at 2.144. So 2.14 on the U.S. 30-year. 30-year's up 4.6 basis points, and the 10-year's up, looks like 2.7 basis points up. So yields are starting to creep up again. And the reason why is they're getting almost to the point of the next cut. They priced in the first cut, and now I think they're just starting now to price in the second cut. So we're going to see that 10-year start to head up toward 2%. Yeah, so see, so far, we haven't seen the market crash yet. because the Fed hasn't done much. They're still stimulating to the tune of $90 billion a month. It was 120. Now it's 90. Well, in a month or so, it's only going to be 60, and then 30, and then nothing. Nothing. No stimulus. They're cutting off the tap. So right now, it's like a water tap in your yard. You know, you're hosing your car down or whatever. Your kid comes over, and he turns the tap off one turn. Well, you still got lots of water to squirt on your car. Just one turn. But in the second turn, you notice the water pressure's only half of what it was. And then he turns it one more time, and there's just a trickle coming out. It gets hard to wash your car then. And then he turns one more turn, there's nothing coming out of the hose. That's what's going on right now with the Fed. And they've just made that first turn. It's really nothing. The guy's still washing his car. In other words, the markets are still doing okay because they haven't really done anything yet. But they're going to do it. And they're going to do it until they get their crash they're looking for. And they're going to do more and more. So they're turning off the tap for the money. That's first. Then they're going to raise interest rates. That's second. And if all that don't crash the market, then they're going to come in and try to tighten their balance sheet, try to reduce their balance sheet reduction. What was it, 8.9 trillion? They're going to try to reduce that. In other words, they're going to be taking money out of the system. This is a debt-based system. You can't take money out of the debt-based system without crashing it. So in other words, what they're telling you is, we're going to do balance sheet reduction, quantitative tightening, in a debt-based system. We're going to haul money out, the same money we put in to push the system up. We're going to haul it out. What's going to happen is the system's going to come down. So anybody out there is going to tell you that the markets are going to go up perpetually while the Fed's doing quantitative tightening, no, we're going to get a market crash. Then we're going to get a market pivot. Then the market's going to go back up. So it's going to create a buying opportunity for some who realize the pivot's coming when the markets go down. It's going to create a very large buying opportunity. We're already in a buying opportunity on these markets because the Fed is going to do a pivot. But the buying opportunity could get quite a little bit better even yet for the smart people out there. Right? But, you know, to be a good investor, what you guys have to do is be patient. But this ain't going to take long. The Fed's not, it's not going to be, I don't think they're going to get very far into all of this before the system just is going to puke it out on them. And they're going to have to pivot. And this is the biggest news out there, is because for you guys who are holding gold and silver and stuff, this is why I keep going over this with you guys, so you guys understand it really good. Because understanding it really good, if you're an investor, can make your day, make your year, make your life. And all these other people out there, whether they matter, they don't know about this stuff, and they don't want to know about this stuff, and let them be in the dark if they want to be. But it's good that you know, because then you're going to be able to profit from this stuff. You know? And, I mean, at the end of the day, looking out further into the future, the system, the entire world system we have, that we've generated through the ages, started with kings, and then we worked through to governments, and this is coming to the end of governments. It's devolving. It's like a snowman melting on a summer day. And something new is going to come along and replace it. And we're in that period where it's devolving fast. It's melting. The system is melting. And that's because the structure of that system was okay for prehistoric times, you know, and okay for the times of kings when we had tribes, and then the tribes later formed into a kingdom, and they had a king, and then that later formed into governments and so on. But we're past all that nationalism now. We're moving into a highly technologically advanced society. We're not going to need all these big nuclear weapons because that's all part of these different kingdoms dividing into nationalists and nationalist countries and everything, and governments and everything else. We got to come to a point of realization that we're all under this one biosphere called our planet. One biosphere. And do we really want to blow it up with a bunch of nuclear weapons over nationalism, over a bunch of party leaders that just want to become authoritarian anyway? We want to blow ourselves up, and we're trapped in this biodome. If we release all these nuclear things, we're going to be breathing it in. Do we want that? Or would we rather have a peaceful world that's united so that we all realize that, hey, we're all under this one biosphere together. And there's forces out there. We need to protect ourselves not from each other. We need to protect ourselves from what's out there. Because if you take, now I can't think of his name right now. He was a very, very intelligent man, and he was in a wheelchair, and he was crippled. I can't think of his name right now. Stephen Hawking, he said, they go by these formulas if there's life out there. I think it's the Drake equation. I think they go by. And they agree, they're all in agreement that there is life out there because their equations tell them that there must be many different life forms out there. But Stephen Hawking said that these life forms out there, do not count on them being friendly to us. Don't count on it. They might want our destruction or want to utilize us. In other words, make slaves out of us. And so, basically, it's us against them, the ones out there, because they agree that they exist. We need to protect, that's what we need to protect ourselves against. We're all under this one biodome sphere called our planet together, humanity, and we should be thinking about protecting ourselves from what's out there, not what's in here. You know? And so, yeah, we went through these dark ages, so I'll call them dark ages. Up till now, it's been a dark age. It's the dark ages. The dark ages is where we all want to fight each other under this one biosphere. We all want to blow ourselves up. And talk about a proliferation of nuclear devices. They built enough to blow us up 100 times over. And then we got these madmen out there. They're totally insane. They think it's winnable. Some sort of a battle, nuclear battle. They think, first strike capability and all this kind of stuff. Bullshit. You do your first strike and everybody's dead, including the ones that did the first strike. There's no way around that. They got enough nuclear weapons to blow this planet up 1,000 times over. That's just crazy talk. A first strike is crazy talk. Totally insane. And you know, a lot of these world leaders, I think, do borderline on insanity. Especially the ones who don't listen to the people and what the people want. And they just say, there's a protest out there. And they say to themselves, okay, let's just ignore them long enough until they go home. That's insanity. They should have their ear to the ground and say, hey, what is your real grievances here? And let me take a look at your point of view for a minute. And let me analyze it and see if you have any credibility in your point of view of what is your grievance. Instead of doing that, they say, just ignore them. They'll go home after a while. That's no way to run a country. And I know this is the way an awful lot of these countries have been doing it lately. And I just see that as the first step toward authoritarianism. And that's not going to work for anybody. Authoritarianism doesn't work for anybody. Because it just leads to unproductivity. It ruins productivity of a country eventually. If you have a populace that's, they're living, but they're like living zombies because they're under such an authoritarian regime. They just want out. They just want some way of getting out from underneath the authoritarianism, but they don't know how. But they certainly aren't going to do a good job at their job. They're just going to get it done and go home. You know? What does it accomplish in the end anyway? It's just it's like a big corporation, a government, but it's an evil corporation. Then at that point, it becomes an evil like an evil corporation, and the leader becomes more like the you ever seen these movies like James Bond movies or something, 007 or whatever? There's always some guy, some evil guy inside a volcano. How come he's always in a volcano? And he wants to rule the world from his volcano lair. It's always a lair, you know. And James Bond sneaks into the lair and he somehow stops the guy from blowing up the world or whatever, you know. And anyway, I'm straying off my topic. Thank you guys for listening to my show. Like and subscribe. We'll catch you guys in the very next episode. Bye bye.